in the North Loop.
Yeah. So you said Brendan?
Brendan, what was your name?
Okay, Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff. Okay.
So most people that I do this with, I don't get coffee, so they don't have much time to think about the question. But you've had a couple minutes.
Yeah.
I'll run the question by you again for the camera. What do you think happens after this life?
It is a great question, and I'm going to answer it a couple of different ways. First of all, I do have a little bit of experience with this, having been dead at one point in my life. When I was 18, I was killed, and my heart and my lungs stopped for just under a minute.
Wow.
So I was gone. I was dead. I don't know why I clicked that on. It just happened. One minute I was laying face down on the concrete, bleeding out, and literally... No, I was hit by a car. And thrown about 60 feet, skidded, and pretty bad damage. It was a lot of hospitalization afterward, but because of the initial trauma, my heart and my lungs stopped. There were people on the scene who, checked my pulse and they're like, he's gone. But no one gave me CPR, no one moved me because I was really in bad shape, and I was right back on. So I did have an experience during that time that felt much...
Did you say you came back on, like you came back to life?
Don't know why, but as everything stopped and everything started back up again. It's a little gory, but I coughed up a bunch of blood and started breathing again. And I did have an experience during that time that felt a lot longer than the just under a minute that I was dead. And it wasn't... It's very hard to describe. It was much more a collection of feelings. I describe it as emotional aggregates, I think, where it's a lot of emotions kind of bunched together to create a gestalt, something that is greater than the sum of its parts. And it felt like moving through myself, within myself, into something greater than myself that was also part of myself. So it was this very cyclical, almost fractal experience. And there was...
Fractal, I guess I don't know what that means.
Fractal is a concept of mathematics where you have a shape, and within a shape that is contained, that within that shape are contained smaller versions of that shape, which are contained smaller versions of that shape. So it becomes this recursive kind of thing. And that's the way I describe it is as I was moving through, as I was feeling these emotions, these intense emotions within myself, that I can't even... It
sounds like a lot of different dimensions or something.
I don't know if I would say it was different dimensions. It was different. It was moving. I almost feel like I was moving in a direction that I didn't know I could move in until then. There was this X, Y, Z axis. But it was something completely different. And it's profoundly beautiful and profoundly moving. And his experience sticks with me to this day, especially with the trauma that came afterwards.
Wow. So overall, would you say a positive experience spiritually, not physically?
I mean, it was a positive experience. I don't know. It's hard to condense a feeling like that down to a binary of positive or negative. It just was an experience. But all that's to say, when you say, what do you think happens to you when you die? I don't know. I don't know if that was the trauma of my brain being skidded along concrete that gave me this experience. I don't know if it was contacting a higher self, a higher power. I don't know if it was the delusional loss of oxygen because my lungs stopped.
Combination of everything.
It could have been anything. I don't know. And that's my answer to that question. I don't know what happens when you die. Or after this life, rather.
Would you say, so do you have like a spiritual background, religious background, or something?
Kind of. My parents were hippies, and they still are hippies. And they practiced. My dad grew up Roman Catholic, my mom grew up Protestant. But they kind of went opposite directions, and they were practicing Western occultism, Wicca, things like that. Meditation practices, but they never told us to do anything. They were very open about belief systems. They said, explore it for yourself, learn for yourself, do what you would like to do, and just make sure you do it and you treat people well whenever you're believing what you believe. My dad, when I was about 12, started taking us, they were separated for a period of time. When he would have us on the weekends, he'd take us to different services. So we went to, shul, with Judaism, we went to Buddhist temples, we went to Pentecostal churches, Roman Catholic services, just to get a feel for it and to talk to the people.
Well, that's cool. He didn't just say, pick your own, he actually took you to different churches.
Yeah, it was a way for him to get us some experience. And I've met many different practitioners of religion. I've met faith healers. I met a guy named John of God who said he could cure by laying hands upon people. He's now indicted on sexual misconduct with his followers and money laundering, so he was full of shit. And I've met Buddhist masters. I've met practitioners of the Osho religion. I've done Native American ceremonies. I've met voodoo and voodoo practitioners.
Have you, so I kind of thought of this as you were describing the near-death experience. Would you say you've done like some kind of psychological drugs? No,
Psychoactive?
Psychoactive drugs?
In my life I have done that, yeah. I've done that.
Compare the experiences? Because when you were saying like different, not dimensions, but like different, like being suddenly open to new possibilities. I have talked to people that have done drugs, and they say it's a spiritual experience. So
I will say there were similarities, but it was something that was much more. When you do psychoactive drugs, some of it can be, very. It is a very emotional experience. You do feel those intense emotions, that loss of ego that comes along with those experiences. But it also can be a very fragmented, kind of trailing off of thought when we do those things. And this was much more direct and much more intensely full body and mind experience. And it, with some psychoactives like DMT or salvia divinorum or ayahuasca, you can feel that time dilation that I felt. 20 minutes you'll be on your trip, it'll feel like hours. So it was similar in some of those aspects, but it was much less of a sensory experience than it was a full conscious experience. It's hard to describe.
I mean, there's a lot of natural drugs that are going through your body at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That are released from your body, the trauma, and adrenaline, and you name it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you? So you're saying you're not sure what happens after we die. Do you believe that you have a soul that's separate from your body? That like if your body dies, that you'll go on?
I don't know. It doesn't really matter much to me, to be honest. I just know, I'm not a solipsist. I don't believe the world exists just for me and me alone. And I don't believe it's that platonic ideal of, what if it's just shadows on the wall of a cave and we're observing it? What if we're brains in a jar, like Descartes said? We those Descartes. I don't much worry about that. I'm glad to have the life I have. I'm glad to have the people I have. I'm glad to have the world I have, as imperfect as it is.
Yeah.
I just, it is enough. It's enough.
Kind of living in the moment.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you don't go forward and do your best and try and do good works for the people you care about and people you don't care about. It doesn't mean that, you're like, well, it's good enough for me. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. I lived at this kind of holistic meditation communist kind of center called the Omega Institute in upstate New York. It was a wonderful place. There was a lot of different religious practitioners that came through there, Reiki masters and vortex healers, people like that, many different yogic practitioners. And it was just such a good place to spend time. Amazing food, amazing people, kindness and love everywhere. I remember one day I was sitting around the fire, not the fire, it was a smoking bench. We had a smoking bar with a few people. It was probably close to midnight. And someone said, this place is amazing. I never want to go back out into the real world. And everyone kind of agreed. It bothered me for a bit, because I was like, first of all, this is part of the real world.
Yeah.
You're not separate. Second of all, if you're so full of this goodness and this kindness, take it out in the world. Like, share it with the people who don't necessarily have access to this experience.
Yeah.
People still need help. So when it comes to your soul, I don't know. It's one of those questions I don't think you have an answer for. So if I do, I do. And if I don't, I don't.
Yeah.
It means I'm going to try and have the best experience for, like I said, the people I love in my communities and myself while I'm here.
Yeah. And would you say along with not necessarily needing a soul or spiritual dimension in that way. Personally, would you say you don't believe in God, or you do, or you?
Depends on what you mean by God. You know, you how do you define God?
I guess I usually try to say, like, I know it's not necessarily, you know, like for me it's the Christian God, obviously, the God of the Bible, but just to say like a creator that's separate from the creation, you know. So a mind, definitely a mind that has decided to create and bring everything else into existence. But you know, like, so not something where you could say, well, who created God, because this would be the initial uncaused cause kind of thing. There wouldn't be more than one, because which one is, you know, the creator of all of them? So basically, one God, a creator God, you know.
I mean, if you're thinking about it as a mind or as a creator, as something that has
as opposed to like an impersonal force, like
electricity
or something.
Right.
As the force be with you.
Yeah. If you're thinking of it as that, something that has will, that has direction, that has intent, I think the concept of that and the concept of that intelligence to do such a thing would be so vast and unknowable as to the point to be superfluous to the experience of you and I sitting here. So again, it's like the soul. I will never know if that is true. I would never be able to comprehend such a force, such a will.
Yeah.
If it is, it is, and if it isn't, it isn't.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And it sounds like you've been on kind of a spiritual journey, or would you say you're still exploring spiritually?
I'm open to anything. Like, I'm open to anything. I keep, you know, it's important to be flexible in the things you believe and in the way you go about your life. My dad was a big proponent of this guy named Aleister Crowley, who called himself the Great Beast 666. He's bringing Western occultism, and he was a terrible human being, just a terrible human being. And a fraud in a lot of ways. But he was also, some of the stuff he wrote about was very beautiful. And he has a quote that's important to a lot of people who like Aleister Crowley, called "Love is the law, love under will." And that's
under will?
Love is the law, love under will. So to me, I think that's the quote. I hope it's the quote. To me, that just means, you know, if there's a creator, there's not. If there's not, there's not. I'm just going to try and love the people I love and love my fellow man, love the earth, and do good things. So just being flexible with it. Like, I'll listen to people. I'll talk to people. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something to share. Everybody wants to be understood. And to me, that's what's important.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, if you're open to labels, would you say you're basically agnostic? Like, you just don't know, you're not sure?
I don't know, man. I don't want to put myself on that label. Like, I don't really, like, it doesn't, I think once you start identifying yourself as I am this, I am not this, you're limiting your range of experiences. I used to do this meditation with some friends. It was called the white something meditation. But one of the teachers, you know, had us look at a chair and say, "What is this? What's a chair? Why is this a chair? It's got 4 legs on it. It's got a solid plane. You can sit. You're not sitting on the ground." Well, where intrinsically is the character of the chair? You know, what was it before? What were the metals that were mined out of the ground? What was the tree? How old was the tree? What was the life history of the tree? If you brought it to a sculptor or a painter or someone in a different continent, how would they describe the essence of what this is? So even in that simple object of the chair, we have all these classifications. But it was so much more than that. Again, Gestalt. We do this with ourselves as well. We say, I am a Christian, I am agnostic, I am gay, I am straight, you know. I think that allowing yourself the ability to be more than just the chair can lead to some happier life.
So labels are limiting.
Sorry, they're not bullshit, they're limiting.
So now, do you have experience with Christianity as far as, like, it sounds like you've been to some of the churches, different, you know, expressions of Christianity. So one of the things you said was that God, you know, this if God is a personality or has a mind, it would be so far beyond us. Do you think God would be able to reveal at least a part of us that we can relate to, so that we could actually have a relationship with our Creator? Because that's basically the Christian message.
Right.
You know, that God made us in His image. We're not God, so we're not completely, you know, God didn't make us gods. He made us in His image, which is less than the real thing, but similar in a lot of ways, like an image in a mirror, you know. An image in a mirror, when I look at it, it looks like me, but it's not three-dimensional, you know. It's lacking in, it can't do a lot of things, you know. So we would be like God, related to God, but not God, if that makes sense. And so my understanding as a Christian is that I can have a relationship with my Creator on that basis of actually God revealing Himself to me, not me figuring out God, if that makes sense. Have you ever thought of that, or do you think, like I guess what I'm saying is, you wouldn't place that kind of limitation that I could never know God if God decided to come down to my level or make Himself known to me. Right. Maybe it's not something I could go up to God's level. Obviously, the Creator of this entire universe, who would we think we are to be able to do that? But if God revealed at least a part of Himself to us, He would be knowable. Does that make sense? Or
I hesitate to speak for God.
But I mean, it's a possibility, right?
I think anything's possible. I mean, you know, God could be a fish in the ocean for all I know. I don't presume to know anything in that realm, and that's okay to me. And I would never presume to tell you that you couldn't come to know God through Him presenting or them presenting themselves to you, to inspire you, to give you purpose, to give you message, to help you when you need help. You know, so I would never presume to do that. I would never presume, if there were a Creator, I would never presume to know their mind or their ways. If there were, I wouldn't. You know, I try and maintain some humility in the face of life, and that is in most things. And if that were to be a Creator, I would maintain humility in the face of the Creator. So, you know, I'm giving terrible answers, but to me, it's. If it happens, it happens. If it is, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. And then I will try to remain humble and have humility and do things that are good for people.
So for me, like, the humility comes in, as a Christian, comes from not believing I can create God in an image I'm comfortable with, or like I can't say things about God that aren't based on some authority outside of myself. So for me, that's the Bible. You know, for Protestant Christians and Catholic Christians too. But Protestant more so because Martin Luther went back to the Bible rather than back to church teachings as his final authority. So I'm a Protestant Christian in that sense, and so it's like, you know, the Bible for me would be revelatory knowledge, where God is revealing Himself to us rather than, you know, like say modern knowledge, where we're figuring things out with our scientific method. You know? So the Bible would be where I would get my ideas about God. So I'm even, you know, like probably the easiest example is, you know, Jesus said, when you pray to your Father in heaven, right? Now, if Jesus had said, pray to your mother in heaven, I would be praying to my mother.
Right, yeah.
Like, I didn't come up with that.
It is because it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's from an authority outside of myself, and, you know, just that example and others, you know. So there's things about the Bible's revelation of God that I, at first it was like, man, if I was going to come up with my own image of God or ideas about God, I wouldn't come up with this. And if I was going to like write the story of God's work in the world, I wouldn't come up with these things, you know, and what it is maybe. And so there's a humility in placing myself before an outside authority like that, or outside revelation, if you will, that I don't have the freedom to invent God on my own.
Yeah, you know? That's beautiful for you.
I'm at a point where, I mean, when you're new to it, it's like let me work this through, but I'm at a point where it's like, yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. You know?
I'm glad you have
So,
that. I'm really glad you have
yeah, I don't know if that helps on not have you read the Bible much.
Yeah, I've read the Bible, I've read the Talmud, I've read the Quran. I've read,
So like all the way through.
cool. And I've read different versions
Some
of it.
discipline. Like, did you decide I'm going to read a few chapters a day, or was it long stretches?
It was long stretches. I mean, it was like as a teenager with ADHD, you get into you're like, I want to know. So you read through it, and then to me, wanting to understand, like, it's like, okay, well, these texts are based on these texts. Like, where did these texts come from? Who wrote this? Like, how did those people?
So you didn't just read the Bible, but you looked into the background of the different books.
Yeah. So I mean, reading about the Babylonian myths that inspired some of those early Judaic texts, Inanna, Enkidu, people like that, Ashara. And then like reading Gnostic texts, the Gnostic Gospels, reading about the Nicaea Council, what books were taken in, put out of the Bible, reading the Dead Sea Scrolls, some of those early texts that people found, reading about different viewpoints of Christianity from around the world, how in Mexico it takes on this Mesoamerican ideal where they're incorporating personalities that were once local gods or local spiritual people into saints, and just like learning about that and exploring those ideas, because it is the history of our people and it's the history of knowing each other. Like, the ability to sit down and talk to someone and know their faith is deeply important to them means that I want to be respectful of that. I want to be respectful of your beliefs. And I when you said, this is something that's been revealed to you and it's been shown to you, and I said, that's beautiful. I really do think that's beautiful. I think it's wonderful you have that in your life. So I have read the Bible, and I've gone to churches. I've gone to there's a great place, I think it's called St. Gregory's in Michigan. A good friend of mine, his father's a deacon, brought me up there once, and I got to sit there in silence in the library with the monks and talk to them after silent hours. Use the monastery, and then talk to them finally after quiet hours were over. When I was a teenager, I went to like a teen activity religious group, and I did volunteering with them. And saw some of the good works of charity that are brought to people. Protestant churches. I walked out of churches when people were telling me I'm inherently bad and I need to repent for all the bad things I've done in my life. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm guilty about all the bad things I've done in my life, but I'm trying the best I can here. So I don't know. Because I care about just people in general, I think it's important to know where they're coming from. Be respectful of those ideas and respectful of how that translates into who they are as a person.
I was just curious, you said you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, like, did you know other languages or something? Or?
Well, there's translations,
Okay.
So, I read the translations.
And the Quran, too, I know.
Well, there's translations to the Quran.
Yes. And so pretty much everything in English, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know some French, but, that's about it, But
it
no,
sounds like you're very well read and that you...
It's the ADHD.
Can I ask what you do for a living?
I'm a scientist. I work in ecology.
In ecology?
Ecology, yeah. Okay. Doing a lot of work with plants and climate change and things like that.
Wow. So, so as an amateur, what can you tell me about climate change? Actually, I don't want to derail the conversation.
No, it's a conversation. It's supposed to be in there. You can't tell a river where to go.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Rivers just go where they go.
Yeah.
I will say this. A lot of people think that climate change is hopeless, that we're headed for destruction. That's not true. There are a lot of brilliant people working on this across many different fields. It's not too late. We have the ability to help our planet out if we work together. We see ourselves as one group of people as opposed to little groups of people who just need to...
So it takes a global...
It's going to take a lot of effort of a lot of people, and I'm worried about the people who are most vulnerable. We're already living in the period of greatest human migration in history. We're already seeing climate affecting the livelihood of those who are most vulnerable amongst us. And I don't want that to happen. That's part of why I work so hard on it, is because I care about the people who live on this planet. I care about all the plants. I care about all the animals. I want this world to be livable for people who come after us. I want to, and I want to be proud of what I do. It makes me proud to do that.
That's cool. yeah, I view, like, I do believe, obviously, it seems obvious to me that the climate is changing. I think it's been changing. It's always been changing, you know?
Yes.
Maybe more so lately.
Right. It's not necessarily the change, it's the rate of change. You know, it's the climate does, there goes through natural warming and cooling periods. And there is noise amongst those periods where, you know, it's like, well, this is outside of the normal warming period. Those things happen over large spans of time.
Yeah.
The fact that in the last 300 years we've seen the change that we've seen it's not good.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
I mean, so as a Christian, there's a part of me that, I hope Jesus returns and, you know, we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But then there's the other part. So it's like, my understanding of the Bible is that when I do read about all the prophecies, you know, like what's going to happen in the future, it's like Jesus said, it's not for you to know the day or the hour, right? So hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The worst would be that he's coming back many generations from now. I mean, that gives more people an opportunity to live, you know, and that's a good thing. But so prepare for the worst would be, part of that would be to have a sustainable attitude towards the environment for future generations. Like, it's our responsibility to live in such a way that we're not robbing the future from future generations, if that makes sense. So I think there's a balance, you know, that a lot of Christians don't have. They need to have that, you know.
I don't presume to speak for no Christians.
Well, I just I think there have been many who've said, let's just, you know, like, the earth is ours for the taking. Let's take advantage of it. Yeah. Don't worry about, you know, future generations, whatever. And no, we need to, you know, Adam and Eve, their first job was to take care of the garden. You know, the Bible's, and there was dignity and joy in that, you know. So
also, you know,
we need to take care of this earth.
If there is a Judeo-Christian God, the way you're talking, you know, I think that, you know, for preparing for that day of judgment with the kingdom, that Jesus returns, the kingdom of heaven comes into place, you know, in the meantime, getting us to that point is, you know, people working together on stuff. One of my favorite things I ever heard, I don't remember who told it to me, I believe it was someone at one of the churches I went to as a kid. That my dad took me to. I don't recall, but they told me the story about a man in a house, and he hears on the radio, there's going to be a flood. I said, great, praise God, save my house from this flood. And the water starts coming. The neighbor comes over. He's like, hey, let's get this flood in here. You got to get out of here. He's like, no, I prayed. Everything's going to be fine. I said, all right. So then, you know, the water's coming in. It's up to his chest, and you know, some firemen come by in a boat and like, get out of here, you gotta evacuate. Like, this whole valley is flooding. I prayed to God, it's fine. Next thing you know, the man's on the roof of his house. The water's like up on the roof. He's climbing up. A helicopter comes by, puts a ladder out, and they're like, get out of here. He's like, no, I'm fine, I prayed. God's gonna take care of me. Valley floods, the man dies. He goes up to heaven, and he asks God, I prayed to you, you saved me. Why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent your neighbor, I sent the boat, I sent the helicopter. It's up to you. Yeah. To me, there's something beautiful in that. Like, especially in the fact that, you know, I would never presume to know if there was a creator, the mind of the creator, or the works of that creator. But I know to help other people on this planet. And I know to, when people ask me to help, to try and give them that help.
So I think that story is perfect. I've heard it before.
Many people have.
So for you as one who, it sounds like you haven't settled on a certain belief, and I think to settle on one would be maybe to the exclusion of all the others. So like, why would I ever settle on one kind of thing? But if you were to pray or have the attitude to, you know, God, show yourself to me somehow, you know, and he never does. Do you think you could ever come to a point where you'd say, or where God would say, Brendan, I showed you myself in that sunset last night, and I showed you, you know, myself in all the love of the people around you, and you see what I'm saying? Like, at least I showed that I exist, and like, what would it take? What do you have any kind of criteria for recognizing God when you see Him,
Yeah.
you know, or
I don't.
yeah.
I really don't. That's
A lot
okay.
of people, I've asked that before. Other people say, you know, like a miracle or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I feel like, you know, if I depended on a miracle like that, 20 years later, if I hadn't seen another one, I would start to question the first. You know,
Yeah.
there'd come a point where I'd be like, no, I need something else now. You know.
Yeah.
So for me, I take the word of people that I don't believe had any ulterior motives, you know, as far as like who wrote the Bible. One of the things that convinces me about the Bible is that, you know, like how they say, well, history is, you know, depends on, you know, the people who write the history books are the winners,
Right,
you know,
right,
and
right.
they write and make themselves look so great. One of the things that convinces me about the Bible is they don't make themselves look great.
Yeah, some of those stories are pretty
They
rough.
make God.
Yeah, I mean, even God doesn't always come off.
Well, yeah,
in the Bible.
that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of things about God that, yeah, I wouldn't. If I was going to make up my own religion and
That's
write
what you're
it,
saying, yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't write that. So, yeah. So do you feel like you have a good understanding of, say, the gospel message? I mean, you know,
Pretty
like
decent.
if you found out that there was like, let's say you did die, you know,
Again,
and
yeah.
again,
Yeah.
and it was real this time, or permanent.
Yeah.
And you do wake up, and there is a judgment day, as Jesus talked about, and you know, and heaven and hell at stake, and God is the judge. Where would you end up? Do you think?
I don't know. That's not for me to know.
Yeah.
I know that I will do the best I can to live a good life in this period.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess. Yeah. I didn't mean to ask that because you can't know, but. What do you think the Bible would say? Like based on the criteria?
You know, like if I've sinned or if I've repented, if I've accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior and things like that.
Yeah.
If according to those rules, yeah, I would go to hell. But you know, I'm gonna live a good life and do the good things I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it, and if that is my future, that is my future.
Yeah.
And I will gladly live a good life in service of the people I love, and the communities I love, and the planet I love. And if that means eternal damnation, that's what it means. I'm accepting of that. According to the gospel. Okay. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And if I'm called to face judgment for the works that I've made on this earth that I feel have been correct and loving and caring, I will do that gladly. I'll do that proudly. I'll do that bravely.
I guess one of the things that I've kind of discovered, so I've asked this question of a lot of people, and I've never met anyone yet who said they're perfect, number one.
Oh, God, no, yeah.
No surprise,
Yeah.
but, you know, but would you be good enough for heaven according to, you know, the standards of the Bible? And the vast majority of people that I talk to believe, yes, I would.
Yeah,
you know, if you put my good deeds on one hand, and you know, if the balance scale.
I got a lot of life left to live. I don't know. You know, there might come a time where I become a born again Christian. I accept all of those things. There might be. There might not. I might. Want to go live in the woods and eat carrots for the rest of my life. You know, I might go and live in another country and work for a government that does some terrible things, even though I'm trying to work my hardest to do good things. I don't know. I don't know my future. I don't know anyone's future. I know that, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but in the time I have,
How old are you?
I'm 41. I turned 41.
I would have said about 30
week ago.
but
Thank you. You haven't seen the weathered face underneath the mask.
Right.
I just, I will, if I die, if I walk out of the coffee shop and I die right now, according to some of the rules of the Bible, I've eaten a lot of shellfish in my life. I played a lot of football with my buddies. Those things are
Football?
You can't touch the skin of a pig.
Oh,
I've worn different fabrics at the same time. You're not supposed to blend your fabrics. I've been married and I've gotten divorced, which is a big no-no for a lot of people. And I've done all that Levitical stuff. Most of that stuff, I've broken those rules entirely.
I
the Old
would
Testament.
be totally guilty as charged. For me, so my understanding of the Bible is that, like if you talk about like the laws of the Old Testament, you had the civil laws of the Jewish nation as they were being transformed into a people apart, set apart for God. So it's like they're coming from Egypt, and there's certain laws that God gave them to kind of set them apart from, the pagan societies that they came from. So those are civil, laws meant for ancient Israelites, right? Then there's ceremonial laws, which set apart God as being holy, and so I, as a Christian, am not obligated to follow those because I'm not Jewish. I'm not, the temple worship is over, all that sort of thing. So there's civil, ceremonial, and then there's moral laws, which Ten Commandments, things like that, and those carry on into the New Testament. Those are lifted up and exalted by Jesus and the apostles, and everyone as though that's the standard. So for me, I don't have to worry about all these other laws, shellfish and all that sort of thing, but the moral laws, I could go down the Ten Commandments and find some way in which I've broken every one.
I mean, I've never killed someone that I know of. It would take a stretch for me to be like, well,
even Jesus.
I did this,
so in his Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, like the Beatitudes and that sort of thing, but then he was preaching, actually like expounding on the Ten Commandments. And so he was saying things like, you've heard it said, you shall not murder. But I say to you, if you have anger in your heart towards your brother and you call him a fool, you're in danger of the fire of hell. He's saying it's wrong to murder. Don't kill someone with your hands. Right. But then he's saying, but the spirit of that law is, don't even hurt someone with your words. Don't hurt anybody. Don't do harm. Am I guilty of that? I'm guilty as charged. Murder in my heart, murder with my words. He talks about adultery, like a few verses later, and then he says, but if you've looked with lust, you're committing adultery in your heart. Guilty as charged. So my, understanding of a Christian is, I am guilty. I know you said you walked out of some churches because they said you were, a bad person. I hope they were saying that about themselves too. Were they not? Or were they just kind of like?
It was during a sermon, so really wasn't given the chance to hear,
Because I think that's important. That's a part of the Christian message is to say, we're all sinners. We all are not.
That's one of the beautiful things I find I've taken from Christianity is that concept of grace, where it says you will not, it's not going to be good enough. But you try anyway. You try and do the best you can, because you can't be perfect. In Christianity, God is perfect. Jesus is perfect. You can't be that. But you try anyway. You do the best you can anyway.
So your understanding of grace is it's like we're going to lower the standards a little bit? Or?
No. It's not we're going to lower the standards. We're going to raise up our standards. We're going to say,
you talk about a grace period. Like I just found out that I have a 7-minute grace period at work.
Oh, congratulations. It's the 7.5, because that is like the smallest unit of manageable time is 15 minutes. Yeah. So that half point is 7.5 minutes. Yeah.
So I don't know if would that be the same as the Bible's understanding of grace? It's something I don't deserve.
Right.
Would be the Bible's understanding. It's like, is God going to show me justice, what I do deserve, whether that's punishment or reward, or is God going to show me mercy, something I don't deserve?
Right.
The grace aspect is God's going to treat me in a way I don't deserve. So on Judgment Day, I want mercy because I think according to God's moral law, I deserve hell. I don't deserve heaven. It would be hell. So that's where my understanding of what Jesus did on the cross comes in. It's like there's the grace. He took my punishment for me, and so it's not a matter of doing enough good to kind of outweigh the bad. It's more.
To me, it's not that either. To me, it's the idea that to be able to cross, it's a fucked up place sometimes, It is. It's fucked up, it's sad, it's rough. A lot of hard stuff happened to me. A lot of hard stuff happened to people I know. We all have people we know who've gone through hard stuff. We all have hard times. You get back up, Part of the reason you get knocked down is so you get back up. You try and make the world a better place. Knowing that me, with my individual actions, I'm never going to make the world a perfect place. I'm not going to be able to solve all the world's problems. I'm not going to be able to feed everybody in the world or help clothe everybody or house everybody. I'm not going to be able to stop wars. I do the best I can anyway.
Yeah.
Because That's what you do. You do what you must because you can, you know?
Yes. Now, would you say that you're a human being as a result of that, or are you a good human being?
I don't know, man. That's a value judgment. Like, that's a subjective thing. Like, to me, the concept of being good is going to be different from your concept of being good. It's going to be different from
so, like,
bus drivers.
are you familiar with the story of the Samaritan who, the
I
good Samaritan?
I am, yeah.
So there's a guy.
I know where Sarmatia is now, but...
so this Jewish guy gets robbed and left for dead along the road. And the priest and the rabbi come by. They just leave him. They're busy. They got to be at the temple. The Samaritan comes by and cleans him up. Pays for his lodging. Saves him basically. And so it's the story of a good Samaritan, right? Well, the Christian understanding of what does it mean to be good is that God made us good in the beginning. And so if we're actually being good, like if we're actually using the gifts God gave us to the best of our ability, we are actually being human the way God intended us to be. It's not that we're being good humans. We're just being, we were made for this.
Right, made to be good.
So actually that's kind of bad news, because on the scale, if our whole understanding is this scale between good and bad, the bad things we shouldn't do make the scale go down, right?
Yeah.
So now we hope that the good things that we should do will outweigh it. But the problem is we should do them anyway.
Right.
So we're just being human. We're not doing God any favors by taking all the gifts He gives us and doing our best with them.
Yeah.
We're just being the way God intended us to be. So for me as a Christian, any way I look at it, I am morally bankrupt before God. And I do want to do good. But now as a Christian, it's like, okay, Jesus died for me. He gave His life up for me. How can I repay Him? I never could. But I can at least try. I can show gratitude,
Right. That's grace to me. Is how can I repay? I can never repay Jesus, but I still try.
Yeah.
Like that idea. I may not be able to do the thing, but I still try anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful concept. It's one that touches my
and
heart.
that's what I love about for me the Christian message is that we're not trying to. It's not a matter, and a lot of actually people from Christian backgrounds get this wrong because they've grown up in the faith, they've taken it for granted, they don't really understand it, and so they're constantly thinking, well, what else do I got to do? It becomes a drudgery. Like, what do I have to do to get God's favor?
Yeah.
And it's not meant. It's amazing grace. How sweet this sounds. That I can actually live out my gratitude and my thanks to God for having already been saved. Salvation isn't something that we earn after a long lifetime of struggle. It's something that Christ earned for us. That we can respond with.
So it's not necessarily something that where it's what do I have to do now? It's more
what do I get to do now?
What do I get to do? How do I be myself now? How do I be
the person you created me to be?
Yes. That's super cool. I like that point of view that you have.
And part of one of the reasons I love to have these kind of conversations is a lot of people don't understand that, and so whatever they do with it, whatever you do with it, that's up to you. But I just try to, that whole concept of grace, concept of needing to be saved, implies that without Christ we're not saved. Like the good news only makes sense in the context of the bad news, that without Christ we're not saved. Grace only makes sense if we understand that we don't deserve it. If we think we deserve it, like we're entitled to it, then we're going to live a life of disappointment because we're never going to get the kind of rewards we think we deserve.
That entitlement leads to a lot of problems.
Oh, sure.
I think it really does. The people who feel they're entitled to behave or act a certain way or take.
I'm a high school teacher, so I can see that is a huge problem. Entitled students.
They're still learning too, Again, when I was a high school kid, I was such a dick, but I really was. I thought I knew everything. I thought, no one can teach me anything.
Well, it sounds like you took your education in your own hands and learned a lot.
Part of that, like I said, ADHD, and just naturally curious. Curious about things. Naturally, I want to understand, And I also want to accept that there are things that I'm not going to understand, and that's cool. That's okay. And some of those things, like I said, they don't necessarily matter in my day-to-day life. What matters to me is if one of my nephews is like having a rough time or something, being like, I'm here for you. You can't talk to your parents about it? Come to my apartment and talk to me.
Yeah.
You know, if like one of my non-binary friends like gets hassled, I'm there for them to talk and be like, hey, I'm here for you. Like,
That's cool.
If my mom's going through a hard time, you know, when my grandma died, I was like, I want to give a real depiction of your life and your importance. I gave the I forget the speech. Eulogy, yeah. My grandma died. I gave her eulogy.
Nice.
I wanted to be able to give a real accurate depiction of her that touched people. Like things like that, they matter to me.
Yeah.
And conversations like this matter to me because
I
it builds
appreciate
connection, it builds community. We're all part of community.
Yeah. Are you? I'm going to turn this off, but are you from the area here? Or?
Yeah, I live a couple blocks away.